Reading through the Bible in 1 year. April 16th, Leviticus chapter 20, Psalm 25, Ecclesiastes chapter 3, and 1 Timothy chapter 5. All right. So again, we're still going through a lot of those things that the people in the land were doing that God condemns. This is like 3 chapters of this so far that we've gone through, where he's telling the people, do not do the things that the people who lived here beforehand were doing. Don't ask about their gods. Don't ask about their way of worship. When you see their altars, you're like, I wonder what that was used for. Don't think it. Don't wonder how it was done, and don't try to figure it out. When you see it, smash it, burn it, get rid of it. That's what God has been saying. And as we go deeper into the text, we're going to see that happen more and more as he starts explaining, when you go into this land I am giving you, you must utterly wipe it all out. This is because they have been continually acting in all of these pagan practices that God is 100% against. Let's begin. The Lord spoke to Moses. Say to the Israelites, any Israelite or alien resident, or rather alien residing in Israel, who gives any of his children to Molech must be put to death. The people of the country are to stone him. Might be like, what's a Molech? You can look it up online. Molech is this idol that has arms kind of outstretched, right? And it has a giant open mouth with these like holes in it. And what you do is you kindle fire inside of it. So you have this big blazing furnace, and you take your human children and put them into it so that they will be screaming to death as they are burned alive and can't get out, because even if they try to claw their way out, this entire metal furnace is white hot around them. It is a horrific way to die. Why would people sacrifice to this? I'm glad you asked that. So, sacrifices to Molech were typically for things like prosperity. I want my crops to do well. I want to do well in the future. I just don't think I have enough money right now to take care of this child. I will put it into Molech after I've given birth and burn it alive. It will prepare me for a better life in the future. This is what offerings to Molech entailed. And people did this. This is how strongly God feels about this. Again, any Israelite or resident alien in Israel who gives any of his children to Molech must be put to death. The people of the country are to stone him. I will turn against that man and cut him off from his people, because he gave his offspring to Molech, defiling my sanctuary and profaning my holy name. But if the people of the country look the other way when that man gives any of his children to Molech and do not put him to death, then I will turn against that man and his family and cut off from their people both him and all who follow him in prostituting themselves with Molech. Whoever turns to mediums or spiritists and prostitutes himself with them, I will turn against that person and cut him off from among his people. Consecrate yourselves and be holy, for I am the Lord your God. Keep my statutes and do them. I am the Lord who sets you apart. If anyone curses his father or mother, he must be put to death. He has cursed his father or mother, his death is his own fault. Now, people will be like, hold on. When I was a kid, I cursed at my parents and I said bad things about them. Is that should I die? That's not the same thing. So I'm going to read the note on this, but my thoughts align perfectly with this note. So, cursing one's parents is not merely using condescending or abusive language toward them, but refers to a serious breach of a child's duty to honor his or her parents. It means to make light of something, and it is the exact opposite of honoring your parents. Remember, that's the fifth commandment. For the moral revulsion of such such disrespect, you can look at Proverbs 20:20, 30:11, and 30:17. Now, we've talked about this before. And honoring your father and mother doesn't mean just, when your parents say to do something, bowing down to them and saying, "Yes, I honor you." It's none of those things. It's about taking care of your parents as they get older. And because your parents took care of you, then you are to bring them into your house when they can no longer care for themselves. And they can also help you to raise up your children with you. It creates these multi-generational households. The kids learn from your parents and also from you. And you know that in the future, your children will also take care of you as you get older. So the curse mentioned here is specifically that you have blown off your responsibility to take care of them the same way that they took care of you. Verse 10. If a man commits adultery with a married woman, if he commits adultery with his neighbor's wife, both the adulterer and the adulteress must be put to death. Now, there's a much disputed section in Scripture, the pericope adulterae. I think it's in the book of John. I could be wrong, like 99% sure it's in the book of John, where the Pharisees bring this woman caught in adultery to Jesus and ask him, well, what should we do with her? Now, if that actually happened, it may have, right? I have a whole thing that I go through on it. You can find the text and look back and see how I went over that. I go into it in detail why I don't think it belongs in the text where it is. It might actually have been a thing that happened, but it doesn't belong in the text in that specific place. However, if it did happen, the Pharisees are in the wrong. We see right here, both the adulterer and the adulteress must be put to death. Not just the girl, but the guy, and not just the guy, but the girl as well. Both of them must be put to death. See what's happening here? Again, if it happened, the Pharisees who brought this woman to Jesus are violating the law. They know what should be done with her, but they're trying to trick Jesus. Okay, back to the text. Verse 11, if a man sleeps with his father's wife, he has violated the intimacy that belongs to his father. Both of them must be put to death. Their death is their own fault. If a man sleeps with his daughter-in-law, both of them must be put to death. They acted perversely, and their death is their own fault. If a man sleeps with a man as with a woman, they have both committed a detestable act. They must be put to death. Their death is their own fault. If a man marries a woman and her mother, it is depraved. Both he and they must be burned, so that there will be no depravity among you. If a man has sexual intercourse with an animal, he must be put to death. You are also to kill the animal. If a woman approaches any animal and mates with it, you are to kill the woman and the animal. They must be put to death. Their death is their own fault. If a man marries his sister, whether his father's daughter or his mother's daughter, and they have sexual relations, it is a disgrace. They are to be cut off publicly from the people, or from their people. He has had sexual intercourse with his sister, and he will bear his iniquity. If a man sleeps with a menstruating woman and has sexual intercourse with her, he has exposed the source of her flow, and she has uncovered the source of her blood. Both of them are to be cut off from their people. Now, we read before that this is in a married relationship. If that happens, you are both unclean for a certain amount of time. Note here, it doesn't say that they must be put to death. They're to be cut off from their people, meaning separated for a time. There are also other sections where being cut off from the people means that you must die. That's not the case here, because we've also already read the way that that is to be cleansed. You must not have sexual intercourse with your mother's sister or your father's sister. It is exposing one's own blood relative. Both people will bear their iniquity. If a man sleeps with his aunt, he has violated the intimacy that belongs to his uncle. They will bear their guilt and die childless. If a man marries his brother's wife, it is impurity. Excuse me. He has violated the intimacy that belongs to his brother. They will be childless. You are to keep all my statutes and all my ordinances, so that the land where I am bringing you to live will not vomit you out. You must not follow the statutes of the nations I am driving out before you. See how we talked about that before? For they did all these things, and I abhorred them. And I promised you, you will inherit their land, since I give it to you to possess, a land flowing with milk and honey. I am the Lord your God, who set you apart from the peoples. Therefore, you are to distinguish the clean animal from the unclean one, the unclean bird from the clean one. Do not be contaminated by any land animal, bird, or whatever crawls on the ground. I have set these apart as unclean for you. You are to be holy to me, because I, the Lord, am holy, and I have set you apart from the nations to be mine. A man or a woman who is a medium or a spiritist must be put to death. They are to be stoned. Their death is their own fault. And that is all the notes for that section. Let's move on to Psalm 25. Lord, I appeal to you. My God, I trust in you. Do not let me be disgraced. Do not let my enemies gloat over me. No one who waits for you will be disgraced. Those who act treacherously without cause will be disgraced. Make your ways known to me, Lord. Teach me your paths. Guide me in your truth and teach me. You are the God of my salvation. I wait for you all day long. Remember, Lord, your compassion and your faithful love, for they have existed from antiquity. Do not remember the sins of my youth or my acts of rebellion. In keeping with your faithful love, remember me because of your goodness, Lord. The Lord is good and upright. Therefore, he shows sinners the way. He leads the humble in what is right and teaches them his way. All the Lord's ways show faithful love and truth to those who keep his covenant and decrees. Lord, for the sake of your name, forgive my iniquity, for it is immense. Who is the person who fears the Lord? He will show him the way he should choose. He will live a good life, and his descendants will inherit the land. The secret counsel of the Lord is for those who fear him, and he reveals his covenants to them. His covenant to them. My eyes are always on the Lord, for he will pull my feet out of the net. Turn to me and be gracious to me, for I alone am afflicted. For I am alone and afflicted. The distresses of my heart increase. The distresses of my heart increase. Bring me out of my sufferings. Consider my affliction and trouble. Forgive all my sins. Consider my enemies. They are numerous, and they hate me violently. Guard me and rescue me. Do not let me be disgraced, for I take refuge in you. May integrity and what is right watch over me, for I wait for you. God, redeem Israel from all its distresses. Now, Ecclesiastes chapter 3. There is an occasion for everything, and a time for every activity under heaven. A time to give birth, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to uproot. A time to kill, and a time to heal. a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to avoid embracing, a time to search and a time to count as lost, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. What does the worker gain from his struggles? I have seen the task that God has given the children of Adam to keep them occupied. He has made everything appropriate in its time. He has also put eternity in their hearts. But no one can discover the work God has done from beginning to end. I know that there is nothing better for them than to rejoice and enjoy the good life. It is also the gift of God whenever anyone eats, drinks, and enjoys all his efforts. I know that everything God does will last forever. There is no adding to it nor taking away from it. God works so that people will be in awe of him. Whatever is, has already been, and whatever will be already is. However, God seeks justice for the persecuted. I also observed under the sun there is wickedness at the place of judgment, and there is wickedness at the place of righteousness. I said to myself, God will judge the righteous and the wicked, since there is a time for every activity and every work. I said to myself, this also happened so that God may test the children of Adam, and they may see themselves that they are like animals. For the fate of for the fate of the children of Adam and the fate of animals is the same. As one dies, so dies the other. They all have the same breath. People have no advantage over animals, since everything is futile. All are going to the same place. All came from dust, and all will return to dust. Who knows if the spirits of the children of Adam go upward, and the spirit of animals go downward to the earth? I have seen that there is nothing better for a person than to enjoy his activities, because that is his reward. For who can enable him to see what will happen after he dies? Let's go ahead and move on to 1 Timothy chapter 5 now. Paul continues, don't rebuke an older man, but exhort him as a father, younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, and the younger women as sisters, with all purity. Now, support widows who are genuinely in need. Again, it's going to go into this here. But if any widow has children or grandchildren, let them, the children or grandchildren, learn to practice godliness toward their own family first, and to repay their parents, for this pleases God. Already talked about this, fifth commandment. The widow who is truly in need and left all alone has put her hope in God and continues night and day in her petitions and prayers. However, she who is self-indulgent is dead even while she lives. What does this mean? It means she's not saved. Command this also, so that they will be above reproach. But if anyone does not provide for his own family, especially for his own household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. No widow is to be enrolled on the list for support unless she is at least 60 years old and has been the wife of one husband. Again, not that she's only the wife of one husband. If her husband dies, she's allowed to remarry. The point that he's making here is that she isn't part of some sort of a harem or of a husband who has multiple wives, right? And is well known for good works. That is, if she has brought up children, shown hospitality, washed the saints' feet, sometimes literally, other times it also means just serving the saints, helped the afflicted, and devoted herself to every good work, but refused to enroll younger widows. For when they are drawn away from Christ by desire, they want to marry, and will therefore receive condemnation because they have renounced their original pledge. At the same time, they also learn to be idle, going from house to house. They are not only idle, but also gossips and busybodies, saying things that they shouldn't say. Therefore, I want younger women to marry, have children, manage their households, and give the adversary no opportunity to accuse us. It seems weird, right? He says, well, hold on. If they stay widows like this for a while and they desire to marry, it seems to be wicked, as said above. But here he says, I want them to get married. What he means is that he wants them to get married within the church, not to just go off into the world. That was the point he was making. Women who remain as widows for a while, especially younger women, as shown in this case, it can lead to them becoming self-indulgent, kind of serving themselves. That's the point he's trying to stay away from. Now, speaking of the same women who have not married, some have already turned away to follow Satan. If any believing woman has widows in her family, let her help them. Let the church not be burdened so that it can help widows in genuine need. Again, remember, this letter was written specifically to Timothy, who is a young pastor at a church in Ephesus. And so it's his responsibility to help kind of raise them up in these things. So this is a pastoral letter intended to be given to another pastor, a younger pastor who's learning the ropes. All right, let's begin. The elders who are good leaders are to be considered worthy of double honor, especially those who work hard at preaching and teaching. What does this double honor mean? Well, whenever an elder is given a specific role within the church, they typically are getting paid. If you have a small church, they're not going to get paid very much. But in larger churches, they usually have money set aside to help out for these elders for their work. Some elders are only able to give 2 or 3 hours per week in helping out. Other elders will end up putting 20 or 30 hours a week in helping with the church. Well, that time needs to be rewarded because he's taking time away from, in some cases, his job, and in all cases, his family, so that he can serve the church. Excuse me. So that he can serve the church. So what we see here is that those elders should be paid for their work. And he's going to go into some detail here about that. But he's also saying that if you have some who are specifically very good at specific tasks, and they're spending a lot of time and effort on those things, those people are worthy of this double honor. That's the point being made. Verse 18, for the scripture says, do not muzzle an ox while it is treading out the grain, and the worker is worthy of his wages. Don't accept, okay. Is he just talking about, is this going to go into that here? Okay, no, he's not. So he's not just talking, or the text doesn't just talk about oxen, right? We'll get into this later, but it doesn't just talk about oxen. The point being made is that if you put in the effort, you should be paid for your work. All right. So, verse 19, don't accept an accusation against an elder unless it is supported by 2 or 3 witnesses. I've had people get hung up on this. There's, and obviously we all come from churches. There have been some churches I've been in where there have been some kind of terrible elders. Again, not all of them. Sometimes it happens. And there are sometimes bad things that happen in churches. We're all broken people. There is no perfect Christian. If you find a perfect Christian, get away from them because you're probably going to corrupt them. The point here is that very often there will be people, if you have a good, solid elder within a church, you're going to get people who, under the influence of Satan, even from people inside your own church, they will come in and make false accusations against these people. And you're going to get a lot of it. This is a thing that happens in churches all the time. And it's very hard for that elder because the elder is serving God to the best of their ability. So it's hard for them when these things happen. However, like I already said, there are certainly some elders within the church who may have found a way to get into churches, to get into positions of authority, and they may not be saved. Or maybe God is putting them through something so that there's something that they need to work through, right? These things happen as well. So if you have a problem with an elder at your church, first go to them, explain to them what's going on. And then second, this is all Matthew 18, go to another elder in the church, go to the pastor, go to somebody and say, I have this issue. Can you please help me with this? They're always there to help you when there's these issues. All right, let's move on. Verse 20, publicly rebuke those who sin so that the rest will be afraid. This doesn't mean that if you see somebody cut someone off in the parking lot, you get the whole church together and laugh at them or mock them. But if somebody is in continual, unrepentant sin, something is noted in their life. Again, Matthew 18, the same principle. You have to go to them, talk to them about it. Hopefully you can win that brother or sister back. If that still doesn't work, then you bring another elder with you. You go talk to them, right? And then if they still don't repent, that's when you go publicly to this. Now, the line here, so that the rest will be afraid, that's not to impose some sort of like administrative fear within the church about, oh, I got to keep my secret. No, everybody, like I said before, a church is a group of people who are all sinners. We all have struggles. We all have things that we're going through in our lives, and we need to be open about these. We need to talk to other people about our struggles, because most likely people in your church have gone through the same thing you're going through. Sin tries to separate you so that you feel like you're the only one who has this problem. There's nothing wrong with expressing a concern you have in your own life with other believers. We're to help one another with these things. The line here, so that the rest will be afraid, it doesn't mean terrified. It means so that we will live in fear of our own sin within us, and be willing to step up and tell people, yes, this is a struggle I have. Verse 21, I solemnly charge you before God and Christ Jesus and the elect angels to observe these things without prejudice, doing nothing out of favoritism. Don't be too quick to appoint anyone as an elder, and don't share the sins of others. Keep yourself pure. Don't continue drinking only water, but use a little wine for your stomach and your frequent illnesses. This is descriptive. He's describing an issue that Timothy has, not saying that all pastors should drink wine for their stomachs. Some people's sins are obvious, preceding them to judgment, but the sins of others surface later. Likewise, good works are obvious, and yeah, and those that are not obvious cannot remain hidden. They will eventually all come out. All right, that is all of the notes for now. That's it for today. So, God willing, we'll be back tomorrow. Behold, the word of the Lord.